Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Shanghai Show. As you can tell from the title and the thumbnail, this is the Reading Slump book tag. Shout out to Justy the Reader for these prompts. His video is down below in the description, and I've tagged him down below as well. So go check out his video. And then I've also linked one of my videos. This is from a couple of years ago, where it was 10 tips and tricks for getting through a reading slump / funk. This was from a couple of years ago, so I have been thinking of redoing it. So if you have any tips or tricks for getting through a reading slump or funk, or getting over it, comment down below, because I feel like we could all use them. I'm doing this as my first Book Tag Tuesdays for 2026, and I feel like we need to normalize reading slumps, reading funks a little bit more, because they happen. They happen in every aspect of our life, not just reading. So it's I mean, I've fallen victim to this, but it's kind of sad that we put so much emphasis on trying not to have a reading slump, when again it's natural. It happens with work, it happens with life, it happens with relationships, it happens with other hobbies. It just happens. So I feel like we need to normalize reading slumps and normalize being okay with them, and just having tips, tricks, tools for getting through one, like we would get through any other slump in our life, whether it's a hobby or just life. So I think we need to normalize this a little bit more. And with all that said, let's get into this tag. I have added a couple of prompts, so I've down below in the description. I will note it as I talk about them, but I've also indicated it down below in the description. So the first prompt is, what are some signs that a reading slump is on the horizon for you? For me, I'm actively reading less, and I'm less interested in books. I might still be reading a little bit, and I might still be interested in books, but there's a loss of an interest in reading, and I feel like that's kind of your basic thing, but that really rings true for me. I don't tend to start a lot of books now, because I know that that's a pretty big indicator that I'm about to hit a reading slump. So I try not to do that as much anymore. But with the books that I do have on my currently reading pile, or in my currently reading pile, I start reading them less and less, and I'm prioritizing other stuff, or just watching. But not that this is a bad thing, but I prioritize more watching movies, watching shows, and YouTube videos. Again, not that that's a bad thing, but I'm less interested in reading, and I'm actively reading less. So that's the main sign for me, at least. And I know that's an indication of a reading slump in general, and what a reading slump is, but that, like I said, it really rings true for me. So the next prompt is, if you're in a reading slump, what is the cause of your reading? Was it a book or something else? If so, if it's a book, what was the book? I'm currently not in one. I've kind of been in and out of one for most of 2025. And right now, though, I'm not currently in one, and I'm just trying to read slow and not force myself to read too much, because I've noticed that if I force myself to read, then I'm less likely to read. But currently, I'm not in a reading slump, which I think works in my favor. So the next prompt is one that I've added, and it's, what types of books cause a reading slump for you? Are there any other potential causes for a reading slump? And for me, it's kind of contradictory, for me at least. It's genre-wise, book-wise, it's usually romance, the light, fluffy. I'm okay with dark romance, but it's usually the light, fluffy romance. Even if it's spicy romance, if it's light and fluffy romance, that will get me into a reading slump, because ideally I like romance. I've watched a lot of romance movies, read a lot of books. It's just, for whatever reason, the recent romance books, especially 2010s and later, just haven't worked for me. And it's oftentimes because it uses tropes that ideally I should like. It's not done in a way that I like. And there are just some tropes that I'm just so over seeing used, that it's give me something else, give me something new, give me something different. So it's like romance is a surefire way to get me into a reading slump, and then also like stress, life changes. If something's going on, then yeah, I'm gonna get into a reading slump. But like, I'm not viewing, when it's like stress and life changes, I'm usually not viewing it as a reading slump, just because there's so much stuff going on. So it's like, it's sort of a reading slump, but at the same time, in the moment, if it's because of stress and life changes, I don't view it as a reading slump, because life happens. And at the end of the day, it is what it is. So the next prompt is, do you enjoy the break that comes with a reading slump, or do you feel ashamed? For me, it's really situational. Like, there are times where I will feel ashamed that I'm not reading more, because it's like, hey, I need to catch up with my reading goal, or my friend really liked this book and thought I would like it, and I can't bring myself to read it. Or there'll be times where I am enjoying the break because I can do other things, focus on other hobbies. So it's like, it's kind of like a 50-50 and very situational based on that specific reading slump. So I will do this tag again when I'm in a reading slump. So I wanted to do one outside of the reading slump, for at least for me, for a little bit of perspective. But anyway, the next prompt is, do you feel pressure from the bookish spaces during a reading slump? And for me, more often than not, I usually don't. What is that? And for me, it's like, I am in bookish spaces. I do have a book talk, which I need to like figure out how to log into again. And then I do have a Bookstagram account, and I do post about books here on YouTube, even though this isn't like a BookTube specific account. Even though I am in bookish spaces, I try not to let bookish spaces get to me, because at the end of the day, like, I'm trying to talk more about books that I like to read, and that, this sounds so like the I'm not like other girl trope. I'm not trying to come off that way. But it's like, a lot of the books that I read aren't talked about as often on bookish social media. And I really try to veer away from hyped books and popular books, just because 9 times out of 10 those won't work for me. I'm not trying to sound like I'm not like that other girl trope. But so yeah, like, I don't feel a lot of pressure from the bookish spaces, bookish communities, because like, one, I do have overlap with bookish communities, with what books I'm interested in and what books I've read and enjoyed, but like, there isn't a whole lot of overlap. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's social media. I'm not going to take it super seriously. Like, I'm not going to take opinions on social media about reading and reading pace and whether or not you're in a reading slump and how fast or slow you should be reading it. I'm not going to take those opinions seriously. And it took me a while to get there. It took me a while to get to this point. But at the end of the day, like, it doesn't help if I take it seriously. So it's like, it is what it is. Social media is going to be what it is. So the next prompt is, instead of reading, what do you typically do during a reading slump? And usually I crochet, I bake, like, and I'm even doing this while I'm reading, or like when I'm not in a reading slump. But I do try to focus on those more when I am in a reading slump, because it just gives me a creative outlet, lets me do something, and just lets me still have some sort of outlet for a hobby of some sort. And I've also practiced knitting, but that's kind of been hit or miss for me. So it is what it is. The next prompt is there a book? Ooh, where am I? Okay, there. Is there a book you look at differently because it caused you to fall into a reading slump? If so, what's the book? For me, it was Shadow of the Gods, and I still really love this book. It took forever. The whole series took forever, and it was just like, that's what caused the reading slump. I think I started it in like 2024, and then I finished the whole series in 2025, like maybe February, March of 2025, and I think I started it like September or October of 2024. So it just took forever, and like, there's that association of like, okay, I started this, it took me forever to finish it, and I kind of ended up in a few reading slumps because I started this. I do really enjoy the series. I do still recommend it. It caused a reading slump for me. So there is that like little association where it's like, I'm kind of mad at this book for that. And then the next prompt is, do you have a book that you really wanted to read, but you read it during a reading slump and now it's ruined? If so, what's the book? And for me, it's the final book in that trilogy, the Bloodstone's trilogy, Fear of the Gods. And again, it's a situation where I really enjoyed the series, and this was a pretty solid finish. I enjoyed this book. It's just, I read it during a reading slump, and part of it was that I was forcing myself to finish it so that I could be like, okay, it's done, it's over, I'm good to go, I'm good to move on. So it's like there's that as well, where I was like, I was just trying to finish it rather than trying to finish it to enjoy the series. So there's this, and again, I will still really recommend this and recommend it to people who like high fantasy, especially if it's in like, it's not necessarily in the Lord of the Rings vein, but it's kind of similar in the epic scope and the world building. So I definitely still highly recommend the series. It's just because it was around a reading slump, it is what it is. And that series is also why I was so hesitant to start Malice. And I started it, and part of it was that I was trying to wait until I had the full series. But then I was just like, you know what? I think there's like 5 books in that series. And I was just like, you know what? I don't want to get all 5 books and then not like the first book and then have the whole series sitting on my shelf. So I'm just gonna get that series as I go and read it along with that. Just double checking where I'm at. Okay. What's your best method for getting out of a reading slump? For me, it's just rolling with it, reading bits and pieces of books, going to my local bookstores and my local library. And something I do, it's something that I do when I'm purchasing a book or like at a bookstore like Barnes & Noble, is if I'm not sure of what I want to get, then I'll just pick up whatever books interest me, or whatever books I've had an eye on for a while. I'll pick up those, I'll go sit down, and I'll read a little bit of each of the books. It'll be like 15 pages to like, it'll be on average about 10 to 15 pages, or a chapter, if the chapter is around 10 to 15 pages or less. If it's over that, if the first chapter is over that, I'll read 10 to 15 pages. And I do this when I'm buying books and I'm not, like I said, and I'm not sure what I want. I also do it during reading slumps, just because sometimes it just helps to like read a book that you don't have a big commitment to, whether it's at the bookstore or at a library. Like if it's a book you haven't checked out, sometimes it helps to just not have the money commitment attached to the book. Like, okay, like when you've bought a book, like, okay, I've bought it, so I have to read this now. So, and if like that's like a precursor, sometimes that's a precursor for a reading slump for me, and if it's a precursor for a reading slump for you, it might help to go to your local library or your local bookstore and just read a little bit, because you don't have that, oh, I spent money on this book already, so I have to read it. And you don't have to buy the book after reading it. Even if you like it, you don't have to buy the book after reading it if you're at a bookstore. But I know that what helps me is like reading a little bit, reading bits and pieces. I'm not committing to any books or to any stories. I'm just reading a little bit here and there. And then also just going with it, letting it just write itself out. That sounds kind of contradictory, but like I noticed that that's the best way for me to approach it, because again, like sometimes it just needs to happen, and sometimes life happens and you just need to focus your attention elsewhere. So just letting the reading slump do what it needs to do, sometimes that's the best way to go with it. So the next prompt is one that I've added. It's, what's a method that was recommended for getting out of a reading slump but didn't work for you? So for me, it's forcing myself to read. I know I just said like I read a little bit, but it's like forcing myself to read in the sense of I'm forcing myself to pick up a book and commit to reading that book. Or like I'm forcing myself to pick up a story and I'm committing to that story. Like that doesn't work for me. if I'm reading, like I mentioned with what works for me, like if I'm reading bits and pieces without a commitment, then that's okay, because hey, it's like that's proof to me like, hey, I'm reading a little bit, I'm doing something, but I don't have the commitment of reading like a 300 plus page book. Where it's like, if I'm forcing myself to read, if I'm forcing myself to have a commitment to a specific book, then that's what doesn't work for me. And then also what doesn't work for me is trying genres I know I won't like. Like I talked about romance earlier. If I try a romance book that's like not necessary, that's not dark romance, or where romance isn't a side plot, if it's a romance book where romance is the main plot, the main genre. If you look at like romantasy versus fantasy romance, romantasy wouldn't work for me. Fantasy romance, however, would work for me. Romantasy would not work for me because romance in the romantasy book is the main plot of the book. It's the main end game. Whereas with a fantasy romance, romance is there. It might be important, but it's not the end goal of the book. Or it's not an important end goal of the book. So fantasy romance would work for me, but trying genres like I know I won't like, whether it's sci-fi or horror, I'm starting to realize that mystery thriller does not work for me. So if it's mystery thriller, or if it's dystopian or romance, trying genres I know I won't like will not work for me. I know it works for some people because it gets them out of their comfort zone and just gets them to read something different, which helps. But for me, it doesn't work. And the next prompt is, what's a book that broke your reading slump that you would recommend? One moment, I need to grab the books. So for this one, I have 3. And again, like I mentioned, throughout 2025, I had kind of been in and out of reading slumps. And these 3 books I'm about to mention were books that got me out of my reading slumps each time. Like, I kind of view it as like one overarching reading slump that I had a break from during different parts of the year. So the first book was Heaven Official's Blessing by Mo Jiang Tongjiu. I'm not sure how to pronounce the Mandarin Chinese in it. Tianguan Sifu, I think. I'm probably butchering that. But honestly, like I watched the anime first, which is what helped me at least, because I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to read the dame. I need to read the manhwa. Like, this was perfect. I love them so much. I've read the first 4 volumes. I have up to volume 7, and I just need volume 8. Maybe I have volume 8 at this point. And I've been planning to do a reading vlog for this once I have the 8th volume. And I'm going to be doing like a full-on reading vlog where I read all 8 novels. And I love the series so much. I love the anime so much. And it's like, chef's kiss, perfect. It got me out of a reading slump, guaranteed. I can't guarantee this for everyone, but like, this is such a sweet story. And it's like dark romance. Like, there is some light fluffy romance in it, but it's on the dark romance side of it. And it's just perfection. So in this series, because I'm trying to give description more, in this series you're following Julien, and he was a crown prince of his kingdom. His kingdom fell, and he had ascended to godhood twice before, and he had fallen twice. And in this story, you're following his 3rd ascension to godhood, and just trying to make up for all the chaos his 3rd ascension caused in the heavenly realm, and then also just figuring out what the heck is going on with the world right now, with the earthly realm right now. So that's what this is about. The next book that got me out of a reading slump was The Apothecary Diaries, and this is one that, again, I read the first 4 volumes first, and because I wanted to try to read some manga before I watched its corresponding anime, but I only was able to get the first 4 volumes just because like my local Barnes and Noble stores didn't have anything past 4, or they didn't have like 5 and 6, and maybe they had like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they had like 8 and 9. So it's like, they didn't have like the next volumes that I needed. And then when I did my anime watch series, I ended up selecting the Apothecary Diaries. I love their show so much, like Jinchi and Mao Mao. They're kind of like a better, I hate saying this because I love Ouran High School Host Club. I don't like what they did with the end of Ouran High School Host Club, the anime, but I love Ouran High School Host Club. They're kind of like, Jinchi and Mao Mao are kind of like a better version of Tamaki and Hikaru, not Hikaru, Jesus Christ, Tamaki and Haruhi. Like, I love Jinchi and Mao Mao so much, and I need to finish the series. I also want to get like the Dame / manhwa. I want to get those versions, but since I started off by getting the manga edition, I'm gonna just try to complete the series with that, and then get the Dame / manhwa. So we're gonna go with it. This was another book that got me out of reading slump. And then lastly, it's another manga that got me out of reading slump. It is Delicious in Dungeon by Ryoko Kui. Like, I've talked about this. I think I talked about this in my May the 4th Be With You book tag. But honestly, like, I was laughing out loud with the anime, and then I picked up the manga. I went to Anime Expo 2024. Hopefully I get to go to Anime Expo this year, because I didn't go in 2025. I went to Anime Expo 2024. My sister picked up volumes 2, I believe. I think she picked me up volume 2, and then got me the World Guide, and then I got volume 1 and volume 3 later. Like, I love the anime so much. I love the manga. It's such a great lighthearted story. There are some more serious undertones to it, but it's such a great storyline. I realized I didn't give you a description for the Apothecary Diaries. I'll give you that in a minute. But in this, you're following basically a D&D campaign, and you have like the leader, Laios, and him and his company are attacked by a dragon in the dungeon, and they lose all of their money, all of their provisions, along with one of the other members of their party, and they're determined to go back and try to rescue their lost party member. But again, they don't have any money, they don't have any provisions, so they have to figure out how to survive in the dungeon without money or provisions. This is such, like, I think the second season's coming out soon, this year probably. Let me see, one moment. Okay, there's, as of right now, there's no confirmed release date. It's in production. It was announced in June 2024. Again, it was talked about at Anime Expo 2024 as well. And I remember, let's see, how many volumes? How many volumes? I think it's only 14 volumes. Okay, is Delicious. Okay, I'm just looking this up real quick. Okay, it is Dungeon Meshi. Also, it's also known as the manga is finished. So the 14th and final volume released in December 2023. And it was kind of funny when I think I had picked up Delicious in Dungeon as one of my anime watches, and when I had started watching it, I didn't realize that it wasn't finished yet. So when a new episode came out, I was like, oh, that's right, I thought there was only 20. Oh, we're still continuing. Okay, but this was such a great series. I cannot wait for season 2 of the anime, and thankfully this is a finished and on the shorter side manga series. So I did see the full thing at Barnes & Noble in the Grove, the Los Angeles Grove on Grove Street. I think it's like 3rd Street. And honestly, like, I so wanted to get it, but I didn't have enough money, and also, like, I do not have space for all 14 volumes right now, so it is what it is. And then for the Apothecary Diaries, because I realized I forgot to give you a description for this, in this, Momo is trained in the art of herbal medicine, and she's forced to work, she's kidnapped, and she's forced to work at the Inner Palace, and though she yearns for the life outside of its perfumed halls, she isn't long for a life of drudgery. Using her wits to break a quote-unquote curse afflicting the imperial heirs, Memo attracts the attention of the beautiful Jinchi and is promoted to attendant food taster. But Jinchi has other plans for the erstwhile apothecary, and soon Memo is back to brewing potions and solving mysteries. So that's what you get for volume 1. And this is such a great series. Let's see, is this one finished? I don't know. Looking at it now. Let's see. I think it's like, it's a web novel. And then light novels, and it has a manga and anime. Is the web novel finished? So it's not finished. The light novel, which shows as the main published version, is still being written. The latest Japanese volume released in March 2024. Okay, so it's still in progress. The author, Natsu Hyuga, initially considered ending the story around volume 12, but decided to allow for more character development and a more comprehensive narrative beyond the main romantic climax, which I like really appreciate, because like I'm not like, you kind of know who, like, this is like one of my issues with romance, especially like love triangles. Thankfully no love triangle happens here, but like what happens with love triangles is that like you know who the end goal is, and it's just like there's all this like dithering and like beating around the bush with like who the main end goal is, when like you know who the main end goal is, you know who it's gonna be. So like that's one of my issues with romance. But like that love triangle doesn't happen here. Again, you kind of know who's gonna end up together, but it's like it's done in a way that's like it's not too rushed. It's a slow burn romance. It's not rushed in any way. It's not like too slow. It's slow enough for how these characters are and who these characters are, and it works for them. So like and I'm glad that like we're getting more beyond the romantic climax of the two who are getting together. So one moment as I put this back. And so the last getting back on track, the last prompt is a book. What's a book you're planning on reading once the reading slump ends? Or flip side, if you aren't in a reading slump, what's a book you'd read once a hypothetical reading slump breaks? So like, what's a book you're planning to read once the slump ends? If you're not in a slump, hypothetically speaking, what would be one you'd read once the slump ends? So for me, that would be The Silmarillion. Oh, this is heavy. By J.R.R. Tolkien. Can we talk? The bright green is a little bit hit or miss for me. I guess it works because it matches like there and part of there. But it's like I like green and I don't mind this color. I don't know about this color with this book. Like if it had matched something like this, I would have been fine. Anyway, so this has the text of the ring on its side. I like how it's on its side. Did I show that to you upside down? I don't know. So this is partly hypothetical and partly just like I know I need to be in a better mental space when I read this, so I'm not reading it now. I would read this once a hypothetical reading slump ends, plus once I'm in a better mindset for it, because there is so much that goes on in this book, and a lot of it is Elrond's story and like his history, but it's like there's so much that goes on in this book. Like I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, and this is definitely not reading slump friendly. So that's this book. And then as for people I'm tagging, like my usual, I'm tagging anyone and everyone who wants to do this tag. Do it in a comment, do it in your own video. I'd love to see and know your answers. And again, if you have any tips or tricks for how to get out of reading slump, leave them down below in the comments. I've also included, like I said, my video that I did on that for a couple years ago, like tips and tricks for getting out of one, or getting through one. If you want me to update that, let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.